And coming up on this week's show, are we going to hear the sonic boom effect from HS2 trains? Well, apparently not. But we visit a world-first tunnel portal to find out why. And an exclusive interview with Rail Minister Lord Hendy at the launch of Siemens Mobility's new £100 million research site at Chippenham. Welcome to Green Signals. From me, Nigel Harris, and...
from me, Richard Bowker.
Lot to talk about, Richard. We best just crack on, I think. Here's something I never expected to be talking about on UK railways. Sonic booms. High-speed trains in Germany and Spain experience this phenomenon, a loud boom when a fast train enters a tunnel. And bullet trains have those really long platypus-type noses to stop it happening in Japan. So what are we going to do on HS2 to avoid constant tunnel booms in the Chilterns? Steph and Richard went along to visit the Chilterns Tunnel South portal this week to find out.
In the latest of our visits to HS2 sites, we've come to Rickmansworth to get on a minibus to go and see a unique tunnel on the project.
It's unique because it's designed to prevent the effects of a sonic boom for high-speed trains. We jump on a minibus and head to the Align JV site, just a couple of minutes from Rickmansworth. After donning full PPE and listening carefully to a thorough safety briefing, we head out on site to get our first glimpse of these remarkable structures. Mark Howard, Chief Engineer of HS2, explains why they were conceived in the first place.
Welcome to the southern portal of the Chilterns Tunnel. Quite an incredible structure and probably very much one of the biggest in the UK. These porous portals were originally conceived following some work that we did really long time ago in this programme, back in 2012, 2013, when we started to look at the impact of high-speed trains entering tunnels and the creation of what Richard will hopefully explain in a bit more detail, the creation of micropressure waves. The purpose of these long structures here is to enable the train to enter the tunnel and actually dissipate the pressure that's created as that train enters. So if you think about it like a bicycle plunger, the train is effectively entering into the tunnel, it's creating and pushing air into the tunnel in front of it, and in order to avoid a sonic boom being created, not at this end of the tunnel where the train enters, but at the opposite end, we create these structures, these what are called porous portals.
Whilst the porous portals were being constructed, the roadway was still busy with vehicles feeding the tunnel boring machines burrowing deep into the hillside. Coralie Peru, one of the project directors from Align JV, explains the innovative concrete shuttering and formwork that was used to enable this.
The main concern we had, or the main challenge we faced during the construction, is that it's not that busy today, but when we were building the TBM were actually mining and building the tunnel. So the TBM is like a big factory with a lot of vehicles going in and out to supply the TBM with everything the TBM needs to mine. So we had to keep the logistic working 24/7 every day while we were busy building the portal. So with that in mind, it completely drove how we design and how we build the portals.
We head into the tunnel portal itself, and one is immediately struck by the cathedral-like ambience. This is caused partly by the sheer scale, but also the windows high up in the side of the structure. They are vital to allow the air pressure to be controlled as the train enters the tunnel at high speed. Richard Sturt is an engineering expert from Arup, and he has been involved with the design of this project from the very beginning.
What would happen if you hadn't designed the tunnel this way? What would we experience when the trains go through?
Yeah, so if we didn't have this porous portal that we're standing in, what would happen is the train would rush into the tunnel at 200 miles an hour, hitting the air like a hammer. And then out to the other end of the tunnel, 10 miles away, you get a loud bang about 45 seconds later. And that's because of the pressure that the train generates when it hits the air in the tunnel, becomes a shock wave as it moves to the far end of the tunnel, and then you get an audible noise that obviously we don't want to create. So this structure enables the pressure to build up gradually. It allows the train to come into the tunnel over a period of a couple of seconds, building up the pressure gradually over that time, and then even when that pressure reaches the far end of the tunnel, it does not become a shock wave, and what you'd experience standing outside the tunnel would be something you couldn't detect at all as a human. You wouldn't be able to hear it or feel it or anything.
So could you just explain the science of how that air moves and what creates that sound exactly as it's moving?
Yeah, sure. So the train hits the air in the tunnel and it pressurizes that air. So you've got air near the train, which is at a high pressure. A bit further along the tunnel, the air's just sitting there at atmospheric pressure. It doesn't know anything's coming. And there's actually a front, it's a little bit like a weather front, between the high pressure air in front of the train and the normal pressure air that doesn't know what's going to hit it yet. And that front moves along the tunnel at the speed of sound, actually. So no one's going to be allowed to be standing inside the tunnel during operations, but just imagine that you were, for a moment, and you were standing, let's say, halfway along the tunnel, and a train comes in at one end, 5 miles away, and you wouldn't experience anything to start with. And then over the course of 1 or 2 seconds, suddenly a strong breeze would develop, the air being pushed along the tunnel, and you'd feel in your ears a pressure similar, I guess, to if you were swimming underwater, say a couple of feet below the surface. You'd feel it change from nothing to something over the course of that 1 or 2 seconds. And that's what a pressure wave is. It's the boundary between the high pressure and the low pressure. And that moves along. The boundary moves at the speed of sound, which is 340 meters per second. It's not the individual particles of air that are moving that fast. It's the boundary between the high pressure and the low pressure. And whether you get an audible bang or not depends on the width of that boundary between the high pressure and the low pressure air. If it's a nice fat boundary building up gradually from the low pressure to the high pressure, you can't hear anything. If it collapses down to nothing, so you go immediately from nothing suddenly to high pressure, that's going to be a shock wave, and that's when you get your loud bang. So if the tunnel's a long one, like this one, you need to start by building up the pressure really over a really long time, so you've got a nice thick boundary between the high pressure and the low pressure. And then even when it gets to the far end, it's not going to have collapsed down to nothing and you won't hear anything. And that's why these porous portals have to be so long.
And so is that why, even though the trains aren't travelling fast enough to break the sound barrier, you
Yes.
still get what's known as a sonic boom?
Exactly. And that happens because of the way the pressure wave changes as it moves along the tunnel. And this is a phenomenon that's been studied in railway research and academic circles for more than 50 years now. That's how long it is since a sonic boom was first heard from a tunnel in Japan. So, all the maths and the physics has been studied endlessly, and people have published hundreds of papers about this thing. So the science is really quite well known, and we can leverage that then to do the design for a specific tunnel for HS2, bearing in mind the particular circumstances of the speed of the trains, the size of the tunnel, the length of the tunnel, and everything else.
As ever, the sheer quality of work is wonderful to see. Looking up, it's hard to see at first where the porous tunnel portal ends and the first segments of the tunnel itself begin. This is still a busy construction site, of course, and we must be constantly vigilant as vehicles come and go through the tunnel. We leave the tunnel and head back up to our minibus. Time now to go to the viewing platform from where we will be able to see the tunnel portal from above. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a sense of the funnel shape of the portal. It gets narrower as the train passes through and into the tunnel itself. Mark Howard, Chief Engineer, explains a bit more about why the porous tunnel portal has not been used elsewhere to anything like the same extent, and why that actually was an opportunity for HS2.
Is the Chilterns Tunnel the only one that's designed this way on HS2?
Now, all of our tunnels where we have trains moving through at high speed, or at least entering at high speed, all have porous portals. Design of the porous portals on the rest of the programme may differ from these. each of our contractors is open to design the porous portals to meet the requirements that we've set in terms of length, cross-sectional area, the size and the number of the spacing of the holes along the portal. But the overall design, the shape of the portal is down to the contractor, and that's often done in conjunction with discussion with the local authorities, because each of these portals is subject to what we call a Schedule 17 consent under the HS2 Act, and therefore there's a balancing act to be played against how does it look, how does it function. So no, every tunnel that's got high-speed trains entering has porous portals like the Chilterns Tunnel does.
So is what makes this one a bit special because the length of the Chilterns Tunnel means that you've got to have longer porous portals in order to combat that sonic boom effect?
Yes, absolutely. The length of the tunnel, the cross-section of the tunnel determines how long the portal needs to be, how many apertures there needs to be in the portal. But yes, it's the length of the tunnel that's really driving the length of this portal at 220 metres long on the entry, so really quite long.
And so in Japan on the Shinkansen, they went for really long nose designs on the front of the trains rather than putting these long porous tunnel ends. So why have you chosen not to do that on HS2?
So I suppose the basic point is that we were starting from a blank sheet of paper where we've designed effectively the train and the infrastructure, the tunnels. In Japan, essentially, they had the tunnels. They've used those tunnels that were originally designed for trains operating at slower speeds. They've gradually increased the speed of the train, and in doing so, they realised that they had a problem with micropressure wave generation and sonic booms. So they adapted the trains because it's much easier to adapt the train than it is to adapt the infrastructure. Now, we also couldn't use trains with a sort of 15, 18 metre nose length because our trains not only operate on the HS2 network, but they also operate on the existing network rail infrastructure. And there are requirements set for operation on the network rail infrastructure that determines where the end of the train is in relation to a junction, and therefore we couldn't have 18 metres of train sticking out from beyond the driver's sight position because that would affect the signal sighting distances.
So with the southern portal almost finished and you're moving on to the northern portal, are they going to be exactly the same or are they going to be slightly different, and what would be different about the northern portal?
No, it's a mirror image. Line entry speed coming from the north is 320 kilometres an hour, and it's the same coming up from London. So entry speed is 320. The length of the tunnel is obviously the same. Cross-section area of the tunnel is the same, both ends. Therefore, the portals are the same design at both ends. The southern end portal is complete, apart from some snagging works. The northern portal construction has just started because TBM's only arrived at about 9 to 12 months ago. So yeah, construction's just starting at the northern end.
So this has just been a fantastic trip here to see all the work they're doing, and I just can't believe the sheer scale of it. It's unbelievably huge.
Everything is on the scale, isn't it? But it has to be. You think this is these trains are going to be going into this tunnel at 320 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's incredible the modelling that they had to do just to know that it was going to work. It's just, the science behind it is really, really impressive.
It's still going to be quite a day, though, isn't it, when they actually run it through for the first time? And there's some blokes, or somebody stood at the other end going, is it going to go bang? Yeah, I know it works.
Yeah, exactly.
No, something else. But
They seem pretty confident, though.
They do. Very impressive.
It really is impressive. Like all the work sites in HS2 we've been privileged to visit. Once again, HS2 shows it is leading the world in innovation and world-class design and construction. The day this team see, but hopefully don't hear too much, the first train pass through the Chilterns Tunnel will be a proud one indeed.
So, I had often thought about what are those platypus noses for, and I guess it's because they had to configure the trains for the railway. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly right, Nigel. So as they, I think the chief engineer said on the film, of course, when the Japanese built Shinkansen, they built it for slower speeds originally.
Yeah.
So they'd got the tunnels, they'd got the infrastructure, and when they raised the speed of the trains, then they created the problem.
The benefit we've got is because we haven't got either yet, we can optimise the system from the outset. Exactly.
I find the whole thing absolutely fascinating. Right, investment in the railway is something we all crave and constantly call for, certainly on green signals, so it's great to see when it happens. On April the 4th, Siemens Mobility held a groundbreaking ceremony for its new facility at Chippenham. Since the site is only about 10 minutes from Richard's kitchen table, and the guest of honour was Rail Minister Lord Hendy, he naturally went along.
Siemens Mobility is synonymous with Chippenham, Wiltshire. I've come to the groundbreaking event for what will become Siemens Mobility's state-of-the-art £100 million research and development facility, with guest of honour Lord Peter Hendy, Minister for Rail, as well as staff including apprentices, suppliers and members of the local community.
Morning everybody. It's really nice to be here in Chippenham, and it's really good to be celebrating Siemens breaking ground on their new manufacturing research and development centre.
After the important photographs of the Minister, the local MP and key members of the team with shiny shovels digging some soil, I spoke with Rob Morris, joint CEO of Siemens Mobility, about whether staying in Chippenham had been the logical choice. So Rob, Chippenham, why you've got such a long association with the town. Was it an easy decision to build this facility here, or were there other options considered?
So it was an easy decision to get to.
Yeah.
And I think first of all, it was, why are we moving? You know, we've been here since 1897. That's 127 years or something like that we've been here, and the facility has served us well, and we've got a great bunch of people, a family of innovative people, creative, and really being able to nurture the technology that we've put on the railway now, really modern technology. The challenge though is about, we're now creating even more advanced technology, and we need a facility that creates the environment where we can do that for the people here in Chippenham. Now, you asked the question, why Chippenham? Well, I think we could have gone off these shores. We could have gone somewhere else in the country. The reality of it is, the capability and the understanding is here in Chippenham. And it's not just about understanding signalling technology and train command and control, all elements of that. It's actually also understanding the operational nature of the railway, how it behaves. And there's so much knowledge here. It was important to us that we continue to build on the heritage of what we've already got, but create that environment to be creative and innovative for our engineers here in Chippenham.
That's pretty good. This is an important facility that may well play a critical role in the future of Britain's railway. The final word from Rob Morris.
We've remained steadfast in continuing to invest heavily in UK manufacturing, engineering, technology and innovation, because we take pride in delivering and maintaining trains and infrastructure from Britain, for Britain.
Great stuff, Richard, and really good to see Siemens Mobility investing in such an important facility in the UK. But when the Rail Minister is present, it's always worth grabbing a few minutes with him to chat personally about the big issues of the day. So here's a Green Signals exclusive, because Richard managed to get Lord Hendy in front of one of our cameras to ask him some very direct questions.
How important is investment like this here at Siemens Chippenham site for the government's sort of strategy for the railway?
So look, it's tremendously important. Siemens have been here for 100 and something years, and the fount of knowledge and skills here in order to develop 21st century railway signalling is absolutely vital. And as Rob Morris said, they got an international market, but they got generations of people who've worked here with the background not only in the technology of signalling, but also the understanding of the railway. And I asked him why he was staying here, and he said actually the second, which is the background in understanding the railway, is more important than the first, which is really interesting. So 800 jobs here, loads of apprentices, a clear commitment to a long-term future is absolutely essential. And the other thing I'd say is that ECTS, as you will know, Richard and Nigel does, is a game changer, because actually railway signalling in the last 40 years, all it's done is use current technology to replicate the same capacity. An investment in future signalling that increases the capacity of the railway and can drive capacity and reliability at less money than it costs a really conventional signalling is obviously where we need to go.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you rather do that actually than you would build third, fourth, fifth and sixth tracks on major main lines?
Yeah. One of the great things about Siemens, though, is they're a big company, big balance sheet. They can fund brilliant R&D like this. There's an awful lot of smaller business, SMEs in the supply chain for the railway sector, and there is some concern at the moment that those SMEs are really struggling to get work coming through CP7. Is that something that you're across as Minister, and is there anything that you can do to sort of chivvy it along?
So there is. I mean the hiatus between control periods there's always been a hiatus, because the upside of a control period is you get 5 years guaranteed funding. The downside is that the resultant contracts are so large that they have to go through a complex public procurement process. I've had suppliers come to me and say, I've been promised work, but there doesn't seem to be any money. I shuffle them straight on to Andrew Haynes and say, why isn't your system looking after these people? I think we've sort of sorted that out. And one of the things people have got to remember is that although, we're in tough economic times, you can see that the world, frankly, what is a difficult world economic and political situation is going to affect the British economy. What President Trump's just done, the war in Ukraine, that sort of stuff. But if you look at the railway expenditure, if you add HS2 into it, this railway capital expenditure is probably bigger than it's been for generations in aggregate. And CP7, when we got that settlement, when I was still at Network Rail, we thought it wasn't a bad settlement. And I don't think it is, bearing in mind what else is going on in the economy.
And the next big thing in the economy, as far as the rail sector is concerned, is the spending review.
Yep.
And all the rumours are like it's going to be really, really tough on rail. There's lots of other competing requirements, defence, you mentioned the war in Ukraine and so on. Makes sense, but will you be able to make the case for not only sustaining rail investment, but potentially even increasing it?
Well, I've been working with Heidi about what's in the rail part of the spending review bid, both in capital and revenue. I mean, what you've got to remember in capital is that we're at something like the peak of the expenditure on HS2, which is being spent on the railway, not the railway we've got now, but the one we're going to have in the future. And actually, part of this site's contribution to it is because Siemens is part of the people who've got the rail systems equipment contract. Will the rest of the railway get squeezed a bit? Well, it won't be easy to argue for massive expansion of it. But on the other hand, we've still got TRU going. That's near its maximum spend too. We've got a great government commitment for Oxford to Cambridge, and I'm part of Patrick Vallance's work for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor in terms of driving every ounce of economic value out of the life sciences in Oxford and Cambridge, and the housing between and all that lab space, which is all founded on the back of East West Railways.
Yeah.
So it isn't like we don't know what needs to be done, and it isn't like the government isn't connecting the economic growth, jobs and housing with the connectivity that the railway drives. Will everybody get their railway scheme in this next spending review? No, they won't. The other part of it, of course they won't, because the other part of it though is to link all this into the government's 10-year infrastructure investment plan. How many years have we been going around saying we've got all these schemes, they've got no order to them, we don't know which one's first, massive advocacy. Previous governments have produced unbelievably large piles of schemes with no priority attached to them.
Yeah.
We are determined to sort that out. There's a lot of work going on to do it, And there's some indications that the Treasury do accept, if you're going to have a 10-year infrastructure strategy, that you've also got to understand the quantum of money that might go with it. So we're not finished on that yet. But I think that actually coming out of this, I mean, inevitably people are going to look for their particular scheme in a huge pile. But actually, if we can just sort it out into a long-term infrastructure strategy, at least we can give some credibility to the one. And the final bit, Richard, is this, which is what really upsets me about where we're going on all of that, where we've been on all of this, is that there's very little private sector involvement in these schemes. The greatest travesty of HS2 is that as you roll into New Street, look on the skyline, there's empty new buildings and cranes, that people are making serious money out of property development and new houses and office space and jobs in Birmingham. None of the profitability of that's gone into HS2 because nobody said, here's our plan for the future, and invited people to put a contribution in. We are determined to do better than that.
Very final question. Andrew Haynes has announced he's retiring as Chief Executive Network Rail. You probably know him better than anybody else working so closely with him. What will his legacy be?
Andrew, well, he's as much as anybody could have done, he's fixed Network Rail from the... I mean, I went there in 2015. It was massively centralised. It was terribly risk averse. Nobody ever took any decisions. They always went to somebody in Milton Keynes who sat on them, scratched their head and took the least risky option. And actually, he's driven decentralisation. He's driven powerful people in regions and in routes. He's got in, despite everybody saying that Network Rail is an engineering organisation, he's got in a number of people who've got a background in train operations, and he's started the work that needs to be done for an integrated railway. And I think that's such a brilliant legacy, actually. I can't say how grateful the railway ought to be to Andrew, and I hope that after he's had a rest, he'll think what else he can do for us, because actually that is a legacy that GBR is going to be able to build on.
Now, before we chat about any of that, and there are things to chat about, Richard also managed a very quick chat with Robert Cook, Policy Director at the Railway Industry Association, to ask him about the challenges facing rail supply chain and CP7 expenditure.
Robert, welcome to the show. Control periods, they're quite complicated things in terms of spend. We understand that moving from control period 6, which we did around a year ago, to control period 7 has not been without its issues. What's the current position as far as you're concerned for the supply chain in the industry as a whole?
So it's definitely been a really tough time for the supply chain, and lots of companies, both the large ones and particularly SMEs, have been reporting they've really been struggling. I think if you step back and rewind, what's happened is the end of control period 6 was tough. We had double digits inflation that chewed through a lot of Network Rail's budgets. And then there were unexpected sort of budget shortfalls right at the end of CP6, which was out, if you like, of anyone's control. World events were going on. So at that point, you got some spending freezes or deferrals of expenditure moving into CP7. The whole planning for CP7 actually envisages significantly less renewals in the way that we experienced them in CP6. There's an 11% reduction in renewals across the England and Wales regions and in Scotland. And not only that, but where the work is happening is in significantly different places. So you're getting much less on track renewal, much more on things like vegetation management. There's plans for more on digital signalling. Now, the key issue, I think, for suppliers is predictability and being able to sort of foresee what might be a shock to the business and see that coming and plan for that. The issue is that a lot of the contracts, of course, and the work on them would have been done in CP6 before all of this was known. And when you let a contract, you say, okay, I'm going to set a maximum contract value here so that I've got something to work within. Now, there's obviously then a gap between what that maximum contract value looks like and what the actual work is materializing in CP7. And it's not obvious to us that anybody actually sort of stopped and said, hey, this is going to look really different. And that was then clearly communicated to companies, and planning could then take place to deal with what was coming.
So, SME CP7, a lot of concerns, Richard, I think.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting what Robert said there, which was so much
at the end of CP6. We should just explain, just in case anybody's not aware, CP, control period. And it's basically 5-year blocks of money that up till now, the regulator, through a review, has determined that Network Rail can have to spend on their operation maintenance renewals program.
And that's one of the advantages of the system, because it's locked in and it's locked down. It can't be changed by politicians.
Yeah, indeed. And then off the back of that, they give the supply chain the confidence and the commitment to know what's coming for at least 5 years, okay? And there's always been this issue when you move from one control period to another. There's an element of clearing out old budgets, bringing in new budgets. You hope it's all nice and smooth, but it never really is. And this time, of course, at the back end of CP6, massive inflation, lots of world events.
Like 35% in total, wasn't it?
Well, it consumed a huge amount of the budget. So that was an issue. And then also there's very different budget this time. So, track renewals are down, vegetation management is up. There's all sorts of things going on. And I think the point that Robert made there, which was a very fair one, was that what we really need, what supply chain needs, is at least transparency, understanding of what is coming, even if it's different to what was previously planned or indicated, at least tell them. Whereas I thought what Peter Hendy was saying was, well, kind of, I think it's starting to get under control, and Andrew Haynes and Network Rail got it sorted. I think the reality is a little bit not quite like that.
No, just two really quick comments. It's obvious statement to the obvious, I suppose. If you've got inflation at 35%, you just don't get as much projects for your money, do you? There's that. And I have to say, this is not new. I mean, going right back to rail track days, the most constant refrain from contractors of all sizes was, we know it's coming, just tell us so we can plan for it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the only slight challenge is, I think from a Network Rail point of view, sometimes they're not entirely sure themselves, given how things are moving around them. But, still, it is absolutely crucial. The tier one contractors, the big contractors, they've had some issues as well, and they've been complaining. But a lot of what comes down to the smaller businesses trickle down from them. And if that doesn't happen,
they're really vulnerable.
They are really vulnerable, and we'll talk about spending review and kind of what's going on in a minute. But that, you're absolutely right. So this clarity, this transparency is important.
Be about survival for them, won't it? So the spending review isn't going to help, is it?
No, and that's where Peter was, I thought, very clear. Won't be what everybody wanted to hear. Nigel is basically saying, look, is everybody going to get the project that they want? No, they're not. And then he talked about the things that are happening. Well, they're all things that are committed and happening now, like Transpennine route upgrade and other things. So I got the sense from that he was sort of preparing the ground, as they have done generally, for a pretty tough spending review. And, world events at the moment are not helping. I mean, I do feel for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's you think you've got a plan, and then some clown sort of just tips it in the bin, and you've got to come up with another one. And obviously that's not a British clown. So the challenges facing her in this comprehensive spending review in the budget, I mean, they're just extraordinary, and I genuinely do not think it's going to be good news for rail.
Were there ever a more powerful example of the old saying that life's what happens to you while you're making other plans? Indeed so, and it will be really difficult. And we've talked about it on this show before.
Yeah. This increasing divergence between what people want to happen in terms of investment on the railway and the cold, hard reality of what is going to happen caused by events. That divergence is growing all the time, in my view.
And that's what Hendy was rolling the pitch for. Don't expect anything new, really, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. And very, very, very clear.
Okay, right. Over the past few weeks, a blockade to enable substantial works, including substantial track renewal, has been in place on the Cambrian line near Machynlleth. So Richard packed his gear, got in his car, and went to have a look. However, it's not just about what's been done, but how it's been done, because something quite incredible is underway on the Cambrian, an initiative dubbed Local Railway. Richard talked to the team about that as well at some length, and it's really eye-opening. We'll release the full video next week, and I urge you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and activate notifications so you get told when this one comes out. It's one video, sounds a bit nerdy this, that I got really excited about.
You did.
I had to interrupt my viewing of it to send you a note saying, this is brilliant. And you'll see why next week, and I think you'll agree. Incidentally, you'll be able to listen just as well on audio if that's how you choose to follow green signals, and it will make just as much sense. But for now, here's a little teaser.
One of the most extraordinary pieces of equipment I get to see on site are these TRTs, or track rail transposers. They appear to be affectionately known as McCullochs, after the company who manufactures them. They are an absolute boon for moving and placing track, and I watch transfixed as they go about their business, easily moving lengths of rail over 200 metres long, with precision as well as brute force. Mark explained a little bit more about how the track is laid in precisely the correct place.
Part of our sort of planning and preparation for the track renewal is the techs will come out and put in these stakes, and you notice that they've got numbers on. So what that number does is correlates to the drawing. So where on that number there, you'll see a chainage on your drawing. So you know exactly where you are on your drawing for any offsets that you've got to do to then reinstate the existing track from old to new. So the rail, as we see it here, is now going to be sat in the housings. And what you've got is your pad on the bottom, and then a blue and a black on the other side, which is part of the design process, and then you've got your condom on your clip. Okay, and then that provides that you're not earthing out the track anywhere, so you've got continuity for the signalling system throughout the track.
We then watched as a rail-mounted crane, fitted with a specialised device on the front, pushes the track clips into place. The occasional clip needs to be manually adjusted once the machine has passed, but this kind of automation has dramatically improved the efficiency of the task. Gwyn and Mark examine a newly laid and cut piece of rail which has been temporarily clamped, awaiting the arrival of the welder, who will trim the rail joint and then thermit weld it. I genuinely could have stayed for hours just watching the skill and efficient working of all the team involved, but soon our gator arrived for the journey back.
Because track work's the great unseen, isn't it? Either at night or miles from anywhere, which is why it's a real privilege just to go and look at it. But I have always been fascinated by track machines and gadgets and things, and the way they're saving time and saving their backs and doing the job more safely was just fascinating, isn't it?
It was. It's actually, saving the backs is a great point. One of the guys was saying, in the past, if a piece of rail on a single track, for instance, for whatever reason, had just sort of rolled over and maybe down the ballast shoulder a bit, getting it back up was an absolute nightmare because of the sheer weight of
crowbars and calipers and goodness knows what.
And time. This McCulloch thing, this TRT, just simply goes and picks it up and brings it back.
It's fantastic to see.
So that is fantastic to see.
And very good for productivity, of course.
Great. We're talking earlier about CP7 and track renewal expenditure being down. So the more they can do to get more bang for the bucks, the better. But you're absolutely right. That whole experience is unusual, very privileged. I loved riding on the little gator machine that you'll see when you watch the video. But the local railway stuff is brilliant as well.
I would like to go miles on that, get wrapped up, and what a way to see a piece of railway that is. Network Rail, if you're watching.
Totally agree. No, it was great fun. But the local railway stuff, which I think is why you sent me the text going, wow, this is amazing.
The local railway stuff. What wasn't it? Guy Pearce, I think his name was.
No, Chris Pearce.
Chris, I said the guy. I didn't mean guys in there. But that really had me sitting up, because what he was, some people will say it's just real common sense, but it's the thing about common sense these days is it's not that common, is it?
It's absolutely
and
right.
It's just brilliant. So watch out for it. Watch out for it. I did get quite excited about that. Right. Shall we crack on? I think we should.
I think we should.
Trespass on the railway is a serious problem with serious consequences for those who do it, possibly for their friends and families, and almost certainly for the railway staff who can be terribly affected by the aftermath. Network Rail invests a huge amount of time, energy and money into education and prevention of trespass, as well as rapid response when it occurs. Stephen Richard went to Leeds recently, the county of the White Rose, to find out more, and will publish the full version of this extremely powerful, very high impact video next week. Believe me, it will hit you between the eyes. On Monday, April 14th, it contains some extremely hard hitting scenes, but for now, here's a short excerpt. Take a look at this.
Network Rail and the British Transport Police are having some success with preventing trespass though, and the team on the north and east route suggested we head to a site just outside Leeds to find out what they've been up to. This is Dale Kelly, a mobile operations manager for Network Rail.
So why have you brought us to Wyke? What's been happening here?
Well, here at Wyke, where we are now, last summer, throughout the summer months, we had about 7 or 8 trespassers involving children. Where they've been reported, seen messing around on the train tracks, and we've got trains coming past here at 80 mile an hour. Trains at 80 mile an hour and pedestrians or people that shouldn't be there. Obviously, it's not a good mix. You know, we don't want people anywhere near the railway for the dangers that they cause to themselves and others. So what we've done, because we've highlighted a problem here and we've had trespass, we've got fences everywhere, but not everywhere has got amazing fences like that. You've got to understand we can't put fence on top of bridges like that. So what we've done, we've highlighted where the children or the trespassers were getting on, which is just about 50 yards up the track, and we've put stuff like anti-vandal paint down. We've put signs up and also gone to the local schools. We've identified children and gone to the local schools. So my official title is Mobile Operations Manager. So I get a call off our control centre, which is based in York, and they'll tell me what's been reported. There's an issue, there's children trespassing, they've seen something, and I'll basically respond. So I always say it's a bit like whether it be a fire service would respond to a fire, or a lifeboat would respond to someone needing rescue. We respond to any incident that's on the railway where there's potential threat to life. We need to get here as quick as possible, and along with the police.
And now it's time to thank everyone who supports us. First of all, our thanks to RIA, the Railway Industry Association, our programme supporter, and to Rail Business Daily, our media supporter. Thanks ever so much. Your support, as ever, is hugely appreciated by all three of us. Then a big thank you to everyone who's left us a YouTube super thanks again this week, and you are Bob Walsh, Michael Sutton, Alan Kirkman, Mark Woods, Nigel Mapston, Roddy Jenkins, Alistair Rutledge, Chris Exley, Callum Thorneloe, Transport for Wirral, Graham Webster and John Kirkman. Thank you ever so much for leaving us those super thanks. They are hugely appreciated again by all three of us.
They are indeed. And thanks also to our new gold and silver members, who are Ian Everett and David Clark. You can see all our members and our supporters in the end credits of the show. If you are a gold and silver member, don't forget, please drop us an email to info@greensignals.org with your postal address so we can send you the goodies that you get when they are due.
And it's good to see the membership growing, even on a fast roll. There's a lot of names there, isn't there? So
absolutely,
everyone is welcome, so do join us. And now it's time for this week's Railway News Roundup. Network Rail has awarded new contracts worth up to £1.1 billion for maintenance and renewals work with 4 suppliers. Balfour Beatty, Colas Rail, Switelski, Babcock Rail and Volker Rail will also provide on-track machines such as tampers and ballast regulators, as well as operational and support personnel for routine maintenance, renewals and upgrade works. The contracts run for the next 8 years to March 2033, with a possible 2-year extension.
And you get the prize for the pronunciation of the day award, Nigel, there for Switelski Babcock. That was brilliant.
I hope it was right.
I think it was right.
Just as an aside, you're talking about track machines again. I do wonder whether we ought to do a video about all these huge range of track machines, because we're finding them fascinating, and I think maybe others will.
They are amazing. Yeah, great idea. Right, that one's that
like we need more ideas for videos.
Yeah, well, quite fair comment, but no, you're right. I like the idea of that one. Another contract story here, Nigel. This one's interesting. This is about providing confidence to invest, which is obviously we talked about CP7 shortly. But Grand Central has been awarded a contract extension to its open access rights for the Sunderland, Bradford and London route up to December 2038. And the ORR told us this ensures that Grand Central can continue to provide passengers its daily services. It also gives the train operator certainty for the purposes of procuring new trains, which they have obviously done. Now, in its decision letter, the ORR gave some reasons for accepting the application for this. Now, this is an extension. These aren't additional services.
New rights, yeah.
No, so this is an extension of existing rights, but they're up till 2038, so it's quite a long period. It obviously allows for continuation of services to Sunderland, Bradford from London. That's great. It's enabled them to place an order with Hitachi for, I think, £300 million of new bi-mode stock. So that's great for Hitachi and Newton Aycliffe. It does remove some of the diesel trains coming in and out of London King's Cross. Obviously, that is a good thing. And it improves the passenger offering because, those older trains are looking a bit tired. So because it's an extension, okay. I would just mention one thing. I am going to be doing an interview and we'll hopefully be showing it on the channel very, very soon, possibly even on next week, with Ian Yowett, who was really one of the architects, if you like, of open access. I think that will be a must listen, actually. He's a passionate and experienced guy, so watch out for that one.
I think it will be because Ian is a bit of a Marmite character and he's quite happy with that.
Well, he's certainly not shy, and so I'm looking forward to a great discussion with him.
Me too. Do we have a passing view about more 5-coach trains on a heavily used railway?
Well, they're in existing rights, so I suppose that's one thing. Yeah, you slots are slots, and you really want as many carriages per slot as you can possibly get away with. So, that is something that I'm sure Great British Railways will have at the forefront of their minds in the future.
Okay, well, look forward to an interview with Ian, who's never backwards in coming forward, so that'll be a lively one, I'm sure. Some great HS2 news now, Richard. The second tunnel boring machine, this one is called Caroline, has arrived at Green Park Way in Ealing. And when we talk about arriving, we mean arriving underground, having completed its 5-mile tunnel drive. I'm gobsmacked today they do it so accurately, It means HS2's Northolt Tunnel is now 93% complete. How about that? The 2,050-ton TBM broke through into an underground reception can that was filled with foam concrete. No, I don't know either. Where it then installed the 4,217th HS2 stories are always great on numbers, aren't they? Concrete tunnel ring to complete its drive. Apparently, the reception can method is used because of high water pressure at the site and allows the TBM to maintain pressure while it applied sealant to the tunnel lining. The reception can is then depressurized before it is opened and the TBM lifted out. It all sounds very clever. And another little related story, Richard, before I hand back to you. Thanks to Steve Roberts for alerting us to this one, HS2 has arranged for the loan of the 150-year-old bronze Robert Stevenson statue that was on display at the Plaza in Euston to Locomotion in Shildon. The statue has been in safe storage since 2020 when it was removed while Euston work was going on. So now he's going to spend the next 10 years at Locomotion. I'm sure Robert will be pleased about that. Great to have it back on display during Railway 200.
Now, here's one that Green Signal listener John Kirkman alerted us to, Nigel.
Thanks,
I hope
John.
you're holding your at the side of your chair here. Keswick has rejoined the railway network. Yeah, I know. No, they've not committed to reopening the railway line, but they have created an integrated bus and ticket product, which kind of does the next best thing. So Avanti West Coast and Stagecoach have teamed up to create a virtual railway station, and it means that visitors to the Lake District can enjoy seamless journeys by train and bus. So because the virtual railway station at Keswick has now become part of the national network, it means the departure times of trains and buses can be viewed online. Customers can purchase a single, fully integrated ticket for their entire journey. So tickets are valid for travel on Avanti West Coast services to Penrith, and on Stagecoach connecting bus services X4 and X5 to Keswick, which is great. I think that's great.
It is. Can I please appeal to Avanti to modify the announcements on the trains so that as you approach Penrith, passengers arrive to change here for Keswick?
That would be good, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't that be brilliant?
That would be good.
More good news. Thanks to Nick W for sending us this one. The Severn Valley Railway has announced that work to fix the recent very severe landslip and bridge damage, which we covered some time ago, can begin very soon, as the insurers have agreed to meet the cost of the works, which according to the SVR will be well in excess of £500,000. The fundraising was very important, though, as the SVR will have to contribute through meeting the insurance excess. SVR Head of Infrastructure Chris Bond said timescales are still subject to the production of a final programme of works, and it is unlikely to be completed before the middle of the summer, and it could be later depending on variables. I actually think that was quite quick anyway. Still, it's great news nonetheless. So well done, the SVR. I was expecting that to take much longer than that.
Yeah, I know they've cracked on. I mean, this, and I think Gus and his team there have done a brilliant job. Before we finish on the news round, Nigel, a quick update on Railway 200. You've mentioned that in the context of the Robert Stevenson statue. You remember we talked about this Railway 200 inspiration, the touring train. Well, one of our listeners, Alistair Rutledge, sent us a quick message. He was a bit concerned that the current list of locations that the train's going to visit didn't include anywhere in the northwest, Scotland or Wales. Now, we checked with the Railway 200 team, and they say they've only announced the first 3 months of a 12-month itinerary because there's quite a lot of complex planning and stakeholder stuff to fix. So the next 3-month block of locations, which will be from October to December, I think, that'll be announced shortly after Easter. So thanks for alerting us to this, Alistair. Good spot. We weren't sure either, but fear not. All is going to be sorted. They're just doing it in chunks.
And that's this week's Railway News Roundup complete. If you'd like to send us any snippets of news, you can drop us an email at news@greensignalers.org, and we can't promise to read them all out, but the best ones we will, and we'll always name check whoever sends us the email we read out. So anything you like, big news, little news, around you, further out, whatever you like, we always want to hear.
Absolutely. We do get dozens and dozens of emails. It's really helpful. Time now to do the quiz. Yeah, right. Now, last week's question was this. Oh, my goodness. Talk about being hoisted by my own petard here. The question was, which experimental locomotive lasted for the least amount of time as an operational project? What a nightmare, right? I mean, we had so many entries, so many different entries. They were all brilliant. The problem was tracking down the individual records of how long each candidate actually spent working was actually really, really hard. I'm not a historian, and I ran out of time. And in fact, I'm not even sure it's possible, certainly not for me. One interesting one that did have me scratching my head, which you and I talked about at some length, was Richard Trevithick's locomotive Penny Darren, and which I think was 1804, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was really clever because it did only run for about 9 miles, but you and I discussed it, and you made the excellent point that it wasn't really an experimental locomotive. It was actually built for a job. It just didn't work. So,
kept breaking the rails under its wheels, didn't it?
Yeah, and then the boiler lost pressure. Anyway, so we didn't a little bit. If it's of any consolation to the person that suggested it, we did spend quite a lot of time thinking about it. However, permitted answers did include Bulliard's Leader. Only one. They did actually build more than one, but only one ever ran. It never.
The only
hauled a passenger
completed
train
one.
service.
The other, I think there were 4 in various stages of
Well,
completion.
number 2 was almost ready.
Yeah,
I think, to come out,
but not quite.
like a week before, and then they cancelled the project. But it never hauled a passenger train service. The Clayton DHP1, the Fell Loco, the gas turbine GT3, the Bayer Lundstrom turbine locomotive built for the LMS. That was a good shout. Armstrong Whitworth's Wonko 1 diesel electric loco, and John Fowler's 1861 fireless loco, all in their own way complete disasters. I actually wonder whether Clayton DHP1 may have the shout, but I don't know. When I've got a bit of time, I'm going to do some proper research on this because it's really interesting. Anyway, I put all the ones we thought were just good calls into a hat and drew one out at random, and the winner was Paul Wright. Well done, Paul. And he said Bulliard's leader, and actually pointed out it had never run in a revenue service, which was good.
I think it only did 2 or 3 successful runs.
I think it did a bit more than that, but it definitely never hauled a passenger train.
No, it didn't. And the conditions for the firemen in the middle cab were just appalling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I believe it could reach temperatures well over 100 degrees. So
Horrible.
you can imagine that. Anyway, well done, Paul.
Yep.
Send us another email with your address to quiz@greensignals.org and we will get your mug off to you. This week's quiz, I think that one's quite easy, this one. Famous last words. Here it is. There are plenty of examples of road and rail bridges, that have both. But I would like to know where there was one on Britain's railway which could be used by trains and vehicles, just never at the same time.
Are you saying there was only one of those?
Well, there's one that I know of that is very well known, which I think people will get. If people can come up with a second one, then you will have my respect.
I have got a second one. I know
you've got a second one. Well, keep it to yourself.
I'm not going to blurt it out. Don't worry. I know.
Right.
I know I'm quite likely to do so. So you can have the right to warn me.
So if you think you know the answer to that, either the one I think it is or the one that Nigel thinks it might be, send us an email to quiz@greensignals.org by midday on Saturday, April the 12th. We'll put all the correct answers into a hat, select a winner at random to receive one of our very special and highly prized Green Signals quiz winners mugs.
I don't think I know, Richard, because I drove over it many times. Here's a clue. I'm sure if you ask your dad, he will know it.
Oh, right.
Well,
I might do.
Ask Roger.
I will ask Roger Bowker. Yeah, excellent.
And I'd be surprised if he didn't come up with it after he scratched his head a bit. Anyway, here's a story of dedication to end on, Richard. A northern engineer has retired after keeping the trains running in Manchester for 53 years. One of the operator's longest-serving employees, Craig Neild, has decided that at 70, it's time to retire from his role as outstation fitter at Manchester Piccadilly. Craig joined British Rail in August 1971 on a 4-year apprenticeship at Longsight Electric Depot. He then worked at Newton Heath Depot for 50 years before joining a small team of fitters in Manchester. What a fantastic service to the industry, Craig. You have Green Signals respect, and we're sure your expertise will be much missed by your colleagues, and it would be wrong not to wish him a long and happy retirement.
Absolutely. What a superb story. Congratulations, Craig.
Yeah, excellent. All about the people, Richard, all about the people.
It is.
And sadly, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It helps us a lot. And if you really want to support us, find out about membership on YouTube or Patreon. We'd be delighted to have you along, and you get all sorts of cool stuff. But most importantly, do join us again next week for this show, which will always be free. So we'll see you then. Meanwhile, it's goodbye from me, and
it's goodbye from me.
Have a fantastic week as the sunshine comes along.